Northern Arizona Territory, October 1879. The night air was thick with smoke, and the screams of terrified horses as flames devoured the Redding Ranch stables. Rhett Redding burst through the collapsing doorway, his shirt scorched black, ash coating his face like war paint. In his arms, unconscious and limp, hung Anna Webb, the quiet servant woman he'd hired just 3 weeks ago to scrub stables and mend harnesses. Her dress was burned at the edges, her face smudged with soot, her breath coming in shallow gasps. He laid her in the dirt 20 yards from the inferno, pressing his ear to her chest to hear the faint thump of her heartbeat beneath the roar of the fire. Rhett had told her to stay away from the horses, told her the barn was his domain, that she was meant only to clean what he left behind. But as the flames climbed higher into the black desert sky and the remaining ranch hands fought desperately to save what they could, one thought burned hotter than the fire itself. Why had she been inside? And what had she been willing to die for? 3 weeks earlier, the stagecoach rattled into the town of Red Mesa under a blistering afternoon sun. The town was little more than a trading post, a saloon, a general store, and a church that doubled as a schoolhouse on Sundays. Dust kicked up from the wheels and settled over everything like a second skin. Anna Webb stepped down from the coach with a single worn carpet bag clutched in her rough, calloused hands. She wore a plain grey dress that had been mended so many times, the original fabric was hard to distinguish from the patches. Her dark blonde hair was pulled back severely under a faded bonnet, and her face, though young, perhaps 25, carried the kind of weariness that came from years of invisible labor. She stood in the street for a moment, squinting against the glare, taking in the low adobe buildings and the distant mesas that rose like ancient sentinels against the horizon. This was the edge of civilization, the kind of place where people came to disappear or to start over. Anna was hoping for both. A man on horseback rode past without looking at her. 2 women in better dresses whispered to each other outside the general store, their eyes lingering on Anna's shabby appearance before turning away with tight-lipped judgment. She was used to that. Had been for years. Anna walked toward the general store, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. Inside, the air was cooler, smelling of leather and coffee and dried tobacco. A thin man with spectacles stood behind the counter, sorting through a ledger. He glanced up as she entered. "Help you?" he asked without much interest. "I'm looking for work," Anna said. Her voice was quiet but steady, the kind of voice that had learned not to expect much. "Cleaning, mending, cooking, anything honest." The man looked her over with the same dismissive assessment she'd received 100 times before. "Not much call for that here. Most folks do their own work or have family to help. I heard there might be ranches hiring. Outside of town," he scratched his chin. "Redding Ranch might need someone. Rhett Redding runs it, about 5 miles north. He's particular, though. Don't suffer fools and don't much like strangers. Lost his wife 2 years back and been running the place himself since. If you can handle hard work and keeping your mouth shut, you might have a chance." Anna nodded. "How do I get there?" "You walk. Follow the north road till you see the cottonwoods. Ranch is just past that." He returned to his ledger, already forgetting her. Anna bought a canteen of water with the last coins in her pocket and started walking. The sun was merciless, the road little more than packed earth and scattered stones. By the time she saw the cottonwoods, her dress was soaked with sweat and her feet ached. But she kept walking. She'd walked farther for less. The Redding Ranch appeared gradually, rising from the landscape like it had grown there. A main house built of adobe and timber, sturdy and practical. A barn and stables off to the side, corrals holding horses that moved lazily in the heat. A windmill creaked steadily, pumping water into a trough. Chickens scratched in the yard. It was modest but well kept, the kind of place built by someone who knew the land and respected it. Anna approached the main house and knocked on the door. No answer. She waited, knocked again. Still nothing. She walked around the side and found a man working near the stables, hauling saddles from a wagon. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell past his collar and a thick beard that hadn't been trimmed in weeks. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and tanned dark from the sun. He moved with the efficient grace of someone who'd done the same work 1,000 times. "Excuse me," Anna called out. He turned and she saw his face clearly for the first time. Hard angles, sharp cheekbones, eyes the color of storm clouds. There was something both fierce and guarded in his expression, like a wolf that had learned to tolerate humans but never quite trust them. He looked her over with the same assessing gaze the shopkeeper had given her, but his eyes lingered longer, taking in details she couldn't name. "You lost?" he asked. His voice was deep, roughened by wind and silence. "No, sir. I'm looking for work. The man at the general store said you might be hiring. Did he now?" It wasn't a question. Rhett set down the saddle he'd been holding and wiped his hands on his pants. "What kind of work you looking for?" "Anything. Cleaning, mending, cooking. I can scrub stables if you need it. I'm strong and I work hard. Most people who say that are lying. I'm not most people." Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe, or curiosity. "You got a name?" Anna Webb." "Where you from, Anna Webb?" "Back east, Pennsylvania." She didn't elaborate. He didn't push. "You run from something." "I'm running toward something. A fresh start." He studied her for a long moment, and she forced herself not to look away. There was an intensity to his gaze that made her feel exposed, like he could see through the carefully constructed walls she'd built around herself. But she held steady. "All right," he said finally. "I'll give you a trial, 1 week. You scrub the stables, mend any tack that needs it, keep the barn clean. I've got 3 ranch hands who sleep in the bunkhouse. You cook for them and for me. Breakfast before dawn, dinner after sunset. You sleep in the small room off the kitchen. It ain't much, but it's dry and warm. I pay $2 a week plus room and board. You steal from me, you're gone. You cause trouble with my men, you're gone. You slack off, you're gone. Understood?" "Yes, sir." "Don't call me sir. Name's Rhett Redding. You call me Rhett or you call me boss. Either one's fine." "Yes, Rhett." He nodded toward the house. "Get yourself settled. Dinner's at sundown. Don't be late." Anna walked to the house, her heart pounding with something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, maybe, or just the desperate relief of having a place to sleep and food to eat. The room off the kitchen was barely bigger than a closet, with a narrow cot, a wooden chair, and a shelf. But it had a door that closed and a window that let in light. It was more than she'd had in months. That first evening she cooked beans and cornbread and fried salt pork. The ranch hands, 3 weathered men who looked like they'd been born in saddles, ate without comment. Rhett ate in silence, his eyes on his plate, his mind somewhere else. When they finished, Anna cleared the dishes and washed them in a basin by the stove. No one thanked her. No one spoke to her. She might as well have been invisible, which was exactly what she needed to be. The work was brutal. Anna woke before dawn, cooked breakfast, then spent the morning scrubbing stables that smelled of manure and old hay. Her hands, already rough from years of labor, blistered and bled. She wrapped them in strips of cloth and kept working. By midday, the sun turned the barn into an oven, and sweat poured down her back as she hauled buckets of soiled straw and dumped them in the compost heap behind the corrals. The horses watched her with dark, knowing eyes, and she found herself talking to them softly as she worked. "I know you don't trust me yet," she murmured to a grey mare with a white blaze on her forehead. "That's all right. I don't trust Easy either." The mare snorted and turned away, but the next day she let Anna brush her mane without flinching. In the afternoons, Anna mended harnesses and bridles, her fingers flying through the familiar motions of stitching leather. She'd learned the skill from her father, back when she'd had a father, back when she'd had a life that made sense. She tried not to think about that time, tried not to remember the sound of her mother's voice, or the smell of her father's pipe tobacco, or the way her younger brother used to laugh. Those memories were daggers, and she'd learned to keep them sheathed. Rhett passed by often, checking on the horses, inspecting the work she'd done. He never said much, just a nod here, a grunt there. But she noticed things about him. The way he spoke to the horses with a gentleness that never appeared in his voice when he spoke to people. The way his jaw tightened when one of the ranch hands made a crude joke at dinner. The way he sometimes stood at the edge of the property at sunset, staring out at the mesas like he was searching for something lost. One evening, as Anna was hauling a bucket of water from the well, the handle broke. The bucket fell, splashing her dress and soaking her boots. She stood there for a moment, dripping and exhausted, fighting the urge to sit down in the dirt and cry. But crying was a luxury she couldn't afford. Here, Rhett appeared beside her, holding a new bucket. He'd been working in the corral and must have seen what happened. Handle on that one was rotted through. Should have replaced it weeks ago. Thank you, Anna said quietly. He nodded and started to walk away, then stopped. You're doing good work. Stables haven't been this clean in months. It was the first compliment she'd received in longer than she could remember. Something warm unfurled in her chest, something dangerous. She pushed it down. Just doing what I'm paid for. Most people don't. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a moment she saw something in his eyes that wasn't guarded or distant, something almost human. Then it was gone, and he turned and walked back toward the house. Anna filled the new bucket and carried it to the stables. Her hands were shaking slightly, though she couldn't say why. By the end of the first week, she'd earned her place. The ranch hands stopped ignoring her and started nodding when she brought them coffee in the mornings. Rhett left small things for her. A jar of salve for her blistered hands on the kitchen table, a pair of work gloves that fit better than her old ones, a slice of dried apple pie wrapped in cloth. He never mentioned them, and neither did she, but she understood what they meant. She'd passed the test. On Sunday, her one half-day off, Anna walked into town to buy thread and needles from the general store. The same two women who'd whispered about her that first day were there again, their eyes narrowing when they saw her. That's the woman working at the Redding place, one of them murmured to the other, alone out there with all those men. Shameful. Anna kept her head down and paid for her supplies. As she left, she heard one of them say, "Mark my words, Catherine, that woman's up to no good." A decent woman wouldn't take work like that. Anna walked back to the ranch with her jaw clenched and her eyes burning. She'd heard worse, much worse, but it still cut. That evening, as she was preparing dinner, Rhett came into the kitchen. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her work. She could feel his eyes on her but didn't turn around. "Heard some talk in town today," he said finally. Her hands stilled over the pot she was stirring. "What kind of talk?" The kind that don't matter. Just wanted you to know, anyone gives you trouble, you tell me." She turned to look at him then. His face was serious, almost angry. "Not at her. For her. Why?" she asked. "Why would you care what people say about me?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because you work hard, and you keep your head down, and you don't deserve to be treated like dirt just because you're trying to survive." He pushed off from the doorframe. "And because I know what it's like to be judged for things you can't control." He left before she could respond. Anna stood in the kitchen, the wooden spoon still in her hand, something tight and painful lodged in her throat. She'd learned long ago not to rely on anyone's kindness. Kindness was temporary. Kindness was a prelude to disappointment. But Rhett's words echoed in her mind as she finished cooking, and when she lay down to sleep that night, she felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Safety. Fragile and uncertain, but real. The second week brought a change in weather. Dark clouds rolled in from the west, bringing rain that turned the roads to mud and made the work twice as hard. Anna spent hours in the stables, mucking out stalls while rain drummed against the roof. The horses were restless, stamping and snorting, and she found herself singing softly to calm them. Old songs from her childhood, hymns her mother had taught her. The melodies were bittersweet, but they seemed to soothe the animals. One afternoon, Rhett appeared in the stable doorway, shaking rain from his hat. He stood there for a moment listening to her sing. When she noticed him, she stopped abruptly, embarrassed. "Don't stop on my account," he said. "Horses like it. I didn't mean to disturb your work." "You're not disturbing anything." He walked over to the grey mare Anna had been brushing earlier. The horse nuzzled his hand, and he stroked her neck absently. My wife used to sing, not as well as you, but the horses didn't seem to mind. It was the first time he'd mentioned his wife. Anna didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. Her name was Iris, Rhett continued, his voice distant. She died 2 years ago, fever. Came on fast, took her in 3 days. One morning she was laughing over breakfast, and 3 days later I was burying her on the hill behind the house. I'm sorry, Anna said softly. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't change anything. He looked at her then, and there was something raw in his eyes. You ever lose someone like that? Someone who was your whole world? Anna's throat tightened. Yes, then you know. You know how the world just keeps turning like nothing happened. How people expect you to move on, get over it, find someone new. Like love is something you can just replace. It's not. No, it's not. He was quiet for a moment, then seemed to shake himself out of whatever dark place he'd gone. Anyway, keep singing if you want. Helps calm them during storms. He left, and Anna stood alone in the stable, her heart aching for this man who carried his grief like a stone around his neck. She understood that weight, understood how it could crush you if you let it. She'd been crushed once. She wouldn't let it happen again. That night, during dinner, one of the ranch hands, a man named Cyrus, with a mean streak and a fondness for whiskey, made a comment that turned the air in the room cold. "Say, boss," he said, his words slightly slurred, "you sure it's proper having a woman like her living here? Folks in town are talking." Rhett's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "What kind of woman is that, Cyrus?" "Well, you know, unmarried, no family, just drifting through. Makes a man wonder what she's running from." The other two ranch hands looked uncomfortable. Anna kept her eyes on her plate, her appetite gone. Rhett set down his fork very carefully. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and cold as winter. "Anna works harder than any of you. She's up before dawn and doesn't stop till after dark. She don't complain, don't slack off, and don't cause trouble. Which is more than I can say for you, Cyrus. You got something to say about her, you say it to me. And then you pack your things and get off my land." Cyrus paled. "I didn't mean nothing by it, boss. Just repeating what I heard, then stop listening to gossip and start doing your job. All of you." Rhett stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "Anna's earned her place here same as anyone. Anyone who's got a problem with that can leave right now." No one moved. No one spoke. Rhett walked out, leaving his dinner half-eaten. Anna sat frozen, something warm and terrifying blooming in her chest. No one had ever defended her like that. Not in years, maybe not ever. Later, as she was washing dishes, Rhett came back into the kitchen. He didn't say anything, just stood there for a moment, then spoke quietly. "I meant what I said. You've earned your place here." "Thank you," Anna whispered. "Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing." He paused. "And Anna, whatever you're running from, it's none of my business. But you're safe here. Long as you want to stay." He left before she could respond, and Anna stood at the sink with her hands in the soapy water, tears streaming down her face. She'd been running for so long, looking over her shoulder for so many years, that the idea of being safe felt impossible. Like a dream she'd wake from any moment. But as she dried the last dish and walked to her small room, she let herself believe it just for tonight. The third week brought a visitor that changed everything. Anna was mending a bridle on the porch when a fancy black carriage rolled up the dirt road, pulled by 2 matching chestnut horses. It was the kind of carriage that didn't belong in this part of the territory. Too fine, too expensive, too clean. A driver in a press suit climbed down and opened the door. And out stepped a woman who looked like she'd been carved from ice. She was tall and elegant, wearing a deep blue traveling dress with intricate beadwork that caught the sunlight. Her auburn hair was styled in elaborate curls beneath a fashionable hat, and her pale skin suggested she'd never spent a day working under the sun. She couldn't have been more than 30, but there was something ageless and calculating in her green eyes as they swept over the ranch with barely concealed disdain. Rhett emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. When he saw the carriage, his entire body went rigid. Anna watched from the porch as the color drained from his face, replaced by something cold and hard. "Victoria," he said flatly. "Hello, Rhett." Her voice was smooth as honey, cultured and precise. "It's been a long time. Not long enough. The woman, Victoria, smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Is that any way to greet your late wife's sister? I've traveled all the way from Santa Fe to see how you're managing. Anna's hands stilled on the leather. Sister-in-law. This was Iris's sister. She could see the resemblance now, the same high cheekbones, the same graceful bearing. But where Rhett had described Iris with warmth and love, this woman radiated something entirely different. I'm managing fine. You can turn around and go back. I'm afraid I can't do that. Victoria's eyes drifted to Anna, and her expression sharpened with interest. Who's this? You've replaced Iris already. That's Anna. She works here. Not that it's any of your business. Everything about this ranch is my business, Rhett. Have you forgotten? Iris left me half ownership in her will. The words hung in the air like a gunshot. Anna saw Rhett's jaw clench so hard she thought his teeth might crack. That was supposed to be temporary. Until you remarried. Well, I haven't remarried. And I don't intend to anytime soon. Victoria walked toward the house with the confidence of someone who owned the ground beneath her feet. So it seems we're partners now. I've decided to take a more active role in managing my investment. I'll be staying in the main house, of course. Have your servant prepare the guest room. Like hell you will. Victoria turned, and for the first time there was steel beneath the cultured facade. Would you like me to show you the legal documents? I had my lawyer draw them up. Half of this ranch belongs to me, Rhett. That means half the profits, half the decisions, and yes, the right to stay in my own property whenever I choose. Now, unless you want to challenge this in court, a process that would cost you everything you have, I suggest you accept reality. Rhett stood frozen, his fists clenched at his sides. Anna could see the war happening behind his eyes, rage battling with helplessness. Finally, he turned to her. Anna, prepare the guest room. Yes, Rhett. She stood quickly, gathering the bridle and her tools. As she passed Victoria, the woman's eyes raked over her with undisguised contempt. Make sure the linens are clean. I have very particular standards. Anna nodded and hurried inside, her heart pounding. Behind her she heard Rhett's low, furious voice. You got 1 week, Victoria. 1 week to see that everything's fine, and then you leave. We'll see about that. Anna spent the next hour preparing the guest room, a space that clearly hadn't been used since Iris died. Dust covered every surface, and the air smelled stale and forgotten. She opened windows, beat the dust from the mattress, changed the linens, and scrubbed until her arms ached. The whole time her mind raced. Half ownership. Victoria could destroy everything Rhett had built, everything he was trying to hold on to. That evening, dinner was tense. Victoria sat at the head of the table, a position that had been empty since Iris's death. She picked at her food with delicate disapproval, making small comments about the quality of the cooking, the roughness of the furniture, the generally uncivilized state of frontier life. The ranch hands ate in uncomfortable silence. Rhett didn't eat at all, just stared at his plate with barely controlled fury. Tell me, Rhett, Victoria said, dabbing her lips with a napkin. How are the finances? I'll need to review all the books, of course. Make sure my half is being managed properly. The ranch is doing fine. Fine isn't good enough. Iris and I grew up with certain expectations. This place should be generating significant profit, not merely surviving. This isn't Santa Fe. Out here, surviving is an accomplishment. Perhaps you need better management. Her eyes drifted to Anna, who was clearing plates. And perhaps you need to be more selective about who you employ. How much are you paying her? That's not your concern. Everything about the ranch's expenses is my concern. Victoria turned to Anna directly. How much does he pay you, girl? Anna's hands trembled slightly as she stacked the plates. $2 a week, ma'am. Victoria laughed, a cold, brittle sound. $2 a week for a servant. That's absurdly generous for someone with no references and no skills. You're being taken advantage of. Rhett, I could hire 3 girls in Santa Fe for that price. Then go back to Santa Fe, each. Not until I've ensured my investment is secure. Victoria stood, smoothing her dress. I'll be reviewing everything tomorrow. The accounts, the livestock, the property boundaries. I suggest you prepare yourself for some necessary changes. She left the room in a rustle of silk, leaving behind a silence thick with tension. Rhett finally looked up, his eyes meeting Anna's. In them, she saw exhaustion and defeat, and something that looked almost like apology. Later that night, Anna was washing dishes when Rhett came into the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, rubbing his face with both hands. "I'm sorry about her," he said quietly. "Victoria's always been poison, but Iris loved her, so I tolerated it. After Iris died, I thought I'd never have to see her again. She can really take half the ranch." Iris was worried about me, worried I'd drink myself to death or lose everything after she was gone. So she left half to Victoria in her will, thinking her sister would help me keep the place running. What she didn't know was that Victoria always resented this ranch, resented that Iris chose frontier life over society. Now Victoria sees it as a way to either profit or punish me. Maybe both. What will you do? I don't know. He looked at her then, really looked at her. But whatever happens, I won't let her push you out. You've earned your place here. I'm just a servant, Rhett. I can find work elsewhere if I need to. You're not just anything. The intensity in his voice startled her. You work harder than anyone I've ever known. You care about this place, about the horses, about doing things right. That matters. Anna's throat tightened. Why does it matter so much to you? He was quiet for a long moment. Because people who care are rare, and I've learned not to let them go when I find them. He left before she could respond, and Anna stood in the kitchen with her hands in the dishwater, her heart doing strange, dangerous things in her chest. The next morning, Victoria began her inspection. She swept through the ranch like a conquering general, criticizing everything she saw. The stables were too dirty. The fences needed repair. The horses weren't valuable enough. The ranch hands were lazy. She kept a small leather notebook where she recorded every perceived deficiency, her pen scratching across the pages with malicious precision. Anna tried to stay out of her way, but Victoria seemed determined to make her presence felt. She appeared in the stables while Anna was mucking stalls, wrinkling her nose at the smell. "Tell me, Anna," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "What did you do before you came here? What skills do you possess that justify such generous wages?" "Well, I've worked in households, ma'am. Cleaning, cooking, mending. References?" I can do the work." "That should be reference enough." Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. "How convenient. No past, no references, just drifting from place to place. What are you running from, I wonder? Debt? The law? A husband?" Anna kept her eyes on her work. "I'm not running from anything. Everyone's running from something, dear. The question is whether Rhett knows what you're running from, whether he'd still want you here if he did." She walked away, leaving Anna shaking with anger and fear. Because Victoria was right. Anna was running, and if anyone discovered what she was running from, everything she'd built here would collapse. That afternoon, Anna was in the barn loft, organizing hay bales, when she heard voices below. She froze, recognizing Victoria's cultured tones, and another voice, male, unfamiliar. "The property is worth at least 10,000, the man was saying. "More if you can force a sale. And you're certain the will is ironclad?" Absolutely. Half ownership gives you enormous leverage. If you make life difficult enough, he'll have no choice but to buy you out or sell entirely. Either way, you profit. Good." Victoria's voice was cold with satisfaction. "My sister was a fool to marry him, and an even bigger fool to tie me to this godforsaken place. But if I must be tied to it, I'll extract every penny I can. What about the servant? The one he's keeping?" What about her?" "I guess she seems to have some influence over him. If you want to pressure him into selling, removing her might be advantageous. I'm already working on that." Victoria's laugh was cruel. "It won't take much. Women like her always have secrets. All I need to do is find hers." Anna's blood ran cold. She stayed perfectly still in the loft, barely breathing, until she heard them leave. Then she sat down in the hay, her mind racing. Victoria wasn't just here to manage her investment. She was here to destroy Rhett, to take everything he had. And Anna was caught in the middle. That evening, she pulled Rhett aside after dinner. "I need to talk to you, privately." They walked out to the corrals where the horses moved like shadows in the gathering dusk. Anna told him everything she'd overheard, watching his face grow darker with each word. "She's planning to force you out," Anna finished. "She wants the ranch sold so she can take her half and leave." Rhett's hands gripped the fence rail so hard his knuckles went white. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I built this place with Iris, every fence post, every beam in the barn. It's all we had together, and Victoria wants to tear it down for profit. What can you do?" "I can buy her out, but that would take money I don't have. I'd need to take out loans, and if the next season's bad, I could lose everything anyway." He turned to look at her. "Or I can sell. Take what I can get and start over somewhere else. Is that what you want?" No, his voice was fierce. "This is my home. Iris is buried on that hill. I'm not leaving. Then we fight. We." He looked at her intently. "Anna, this isn't your battle. If Victoria finds out you're helping me, she'll come after you too. I don't care. You gave me a place when I had nothing. You defended me when people talked. You made me feel like I mattered." Her voice broke slightly. "I'm not leaving you to face her alone." Something shifted in his expression, something warm and vulnerable and terrifying. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His hand lingered against her cheek. "You're the bravest person I've ever met," he said softly. Anna's breath caught. They stood there in the fading light, close enough that she could feel the heat from his body, see the flecks of gold in his grey eyes. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. For a moment, she wanted him to. Then a door slammed at the house, and they stepped apart quickly. Victoria appeared on the porch, her silhouette sharp against the lamplight. "Tomorrow," Rhett said quietly, "we start documenting everything. Every expense, every asset, every detail of how this ranch operates. If she wants a fight, she'll get one." Anna nodded, and they walked back to the house in silence, both of them acutely aware of the dangerous thing growing between them. The following days were a chess match. Victoria scrutinized every aspect of the ranch's operations, while Rhett and Anna worked frantically to organize records and prove the ranch's viability. Anna spent her nights going through old ledgers by candlelight, tracking every transaction, while Rhett met with lawyers in town and explored options for securing loans. But Victoria was relentless. She found problems everywhere. The cattle weren't numerous enough. The water rights were questionable. The equipment was outdated. She compiled a list of required improvements that would cost thousands of dollars Rhett didn't have. One evening, Anna was in the barn, checking on a mare that had seemed unwell when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to find Victoria standing in the doorway, backlit by the setting sun. "You care about him," Victoria said. "It wasn't a question. I work for him. Don't play games with me, girl. I've watched the way you look at each other, the way he defends you, the late-night conversations." Victoria walked closer, her eyes glittering with malice. "You think you can replace Iris? You think a man like Rhett would ever truly want someone like you?" "And I don't think anything. I just do my work." "You're lying, but that's all right." "Everyone lies." Victoria's smile was poisonous. "I've been asking questions about you in town, Anna Webb, or should I say Anna Harlow?" The name hit Anna like a physical blow. Her face must have betrayed her because Victoria's smile widened. "Oh, yes, I know. I hired a detective. It's amazing what money can uncover." Victoria pulled a telegram from her pocket. "Anna Harlow, wanted in Pennsylvania for theft. Embezzled money from her employer, a wealthy family in Philadelphia. Disappeared with $500 and their youngest son's life savings. There's still a warrant out for your arrest." Anna's world tilted. "That's not what happened. Does it matter? That's what the law says. That's what Rhett will believe when I show him this." Victoria waved the telegram. "Unless, of course, you do exactly what I say. What do you want?" "But I want you to convince Rhett to sell. Tell him you're leaving, that you can't stay here, that it's too hard. Make him believe that holding on to this ranch means losing you. Without you here to encourage him, he'll crumble. He'll sell, I'll get my money, and you'll get to disappear before the law catches up with you. I won't do that to him. Then I'll send this telegram to the sheriff tomorrow morning. You'll be arrested, tried, and sent to prison. Is that really what you want? To spend years behind bars for pride?" Anna's hands were shaking. Everything was collapsing. All the safety she'd felt, all the hope, it was all built on sand. "I'll give you until tomorrow to decide," Victoria said pleasantly. "Choose wisely, dear. Your freedom depends on it." She walked away, leaving Anna alone in the barn with the horses and the crushing weight of her past. She sank down onto a hay bale, her mind spinning. She could run. She'd run before. But the thought of leaving Rhett, of abandoning him when he needed her most, felt like a knife in her chest. She sat there as darkness fell, as the stars came out, as the temperature dropped and her breath turned to mist. And slowly, painfully, she made her decision. Anna didn't sleep that night. She lay on her narrow cot, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle and creak around her. By the time dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, she'd made her choice. She wouldn't run, not this time. Whatever happened, she would face it standing beside the man who'd given her a chance, when no one else would. She found Rhett in the barn at first light, already working. He was checking the hooves of his favorite stallion, a massive black horse named Thunder that no one else dared approach. When he saw her face, he straightened immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Victoria knows about my past. She hired a detective." Anna's voice was steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "There's a warrant for my arrest in Pennsylvania. Theft and embezzlement." Rhett's expression went very still. "Did you do it?" "No." The word came out fierce and certain. "But the evidence says I did, and that's all that matters to the law." He studied her for a long moment, and Anna forced herself to meet his gaze. She wouldn't hide. Not from him. Finally, he nodded once. "Tell me what really happened." So she did. The words came slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. She told him about working for the Ashford family in Philadelphia, wealthy merchants with more money than sense, about how she'd been their housekeeper for 3 years, trusted and valued. About young Thomas Ashford, the youngest son, a gambler with debts he couldn't pay. About how he'd stolen from his own family and framed Anna for it, planting evidence in her room, forging her signature on bank documents. About how she'd woken one morning to find constables at the door and Thomas pointing at her, with tears in his eyes, calling her a thief. "I ran," Anna said quietly. "I knew no jury would believe a servant over a wealthy family's son. So I ran west and kept running. Changed my name, took whatever work I could find, and tried to disappear." Rhett's jaw was tight with anger, but not at her. "Victoria's using this to blackmail you. She wants me to convince you to sell the ranch. She said if I do, she'll let me go. If I don't, she'll have me arrested. Over my dead body." The words came out like a growl. "You're not going anywhere, and I'm not selling Rhett. She has a telegram, evidence she can destroy both of us. Let her try." He moved closer, his hands coming up to grip her shoulders. "Anna, listen to me. I don't care what some piece of paper says. I know who you are. I've watched you work yourself to exhaustion every day. I've seen how you treat the horses, how you never take more than you need, how you give everything you have. That's not a thief. That's the most honest person I've ever known." Tears burned in Anna's eyes. "You can't know that." "Yes, I can." His voice softened. "Because I know what it's like to be judged unfairly. After Iris died, half this town thought I'd killed her. Thought I'd poisoned her or driven her to an early grave because I wasn't good enough for her. People believe what they want to believe, Anna. But I believe in you." The tears spilled over then, and Anna found herself pulled into his arms, her face pressed against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. They stood like that for a long moment, the barn quiet around them, except for the soft sounds of horses breathing. "We fight," Rhett said finally. "Together. Whatever Victoria throws at us, we face it." Anna nodded against his chest, not trusting her voice. When she finally pulled back, Rhett's eyes were intense, searching hers. "There's something else I need to tell you," he said. Something I should have said before. But before he could continue, they heard the sound of horses approaching. Multiple riders moving fast. Rhett's expression darkened, and they walked out of the barn together. 3 men on horseback pulled up in front of the house. 2 wore deputy badges. The third was an older man in an expensive suit, his face hard and calculating. Victoria stood on the porch, her expression triumphant. "That's her," Victoria called out, pointing at Anna. "That's Anna Harlow, the woman wanted for theft in Pennsylvania." The older deputy dismounted, his hand resting on his gun. "Ma'am, I'm Deputy Marshal Crawford. I need you to come with us. She's not going anywhere," Rhett said, stepping in front of Anna. "Sir, I don't want trouble, but we have a warrant for her arrest. She's wanted for embezzlement and theft of $500 from the Ashford family of Philadelphia." "The charges are false," Anna said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I was framed." "That's for a judge to decide, ma'am. Right now I need you to come peacefully," I said. "She's lying." Victoria's voice rang out. "She admitted it to me yesterday. Said she stole the money and ran. She's been hiding here under a false name, taking advantage of my brother-in-law's grief and loneliness." "That's a damn lie," Rhett snarled. The man in the expensive suit stepped forward. "I'm Jonathan Ashford, father of the boy she robbed. I've traveled all the way from Pennsylvania to see justice done. That woman destroyed my son's future and nearly bankrupted my family." Anna's blood ran cold. "Thomas's father, here." Victoria hadn't just found her. She'd brought Anna's accusers to her doorstep. "Mr. Ashford," the deputy said, "perhaps you should wait at the house while we handle this. I want to see her face when you arrest her. I want her to know she can't run forever." The younger deputy moved toward Anna, pulling out iron shackles. Rhett's hand went to the gun at his hip. "Don't," Anna whispered, gripping his arm. "Please. If you fight them, they'll arrest you too, and Victoria wins everything. I'm not letting them take you, oh. You have to." She looked up at him, memorizing his face. "Find proof. Find the truth. But don't throw your life away for me. Anna, promise me." Her fingers dug into his arm. "Promise you won't do anything stupid." The agony in his eyes nearly broke her. But finally, he nodded, his jaw so tight she thought it might shatter. The younger deputy approached, and Anna held out her wrists. The cold iron closed around them with a click that sounded like a cell door slamming. "I'll get you out," Rhett said fiercely. "I swear to God, Anna, I'll get you out." She was led to a horse, helped up despite the shackles. As they prepared to leave, Victoria descended from the porch, her smile razor-sharp. "Such a shame," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "And to think, Rhett, you were becoming quite attached to her. I suppose that's what happens when you trust the wrong people." Rhett took a step toward her, murder in his eyes, but Anna called out, "Rhett, no! Remember your promise." He stopped, fists clenched, every muscle in his body vibrating with restrained violence. The deputies led Anna away, and she didn't look back. Couldn't look back. If she saw his face again, she'd break entirely. The jail in Red Mesa was a small adobe building with 3 cells. Anna was placed in the middle one, the shackles removed, but the iron door locked firmly behind her. The cell held a narrow cot, a bucket, and nothing else. A single barred window let in dusty light. Deputy Marshal Crawford brought her water and a plate of beans an hour later. He wasn't unkind, just weary, like a man who'd seen too much to be surprised by anything. "For what it's worth," he said, setting the plate on the floor inside the cell. "You don't strike me as a thief. Does that matter?" Anna asked bitterly. "Not to the law. But it matters to God, I suppose." He paused. "Mr. Ashford wants you extradited back to Pennsylvania for trial. Process usually takes a few weeks. I'll do what I can to make sure you're treated fairly while you're here. Thank you." He left, and Anna sat on the cot, staring at the wall. She'd been in worse places, had slept in alleys, in abandoned buildings, in the cold spaces between train cars. But this felt different. This felt final. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky, the light through the window shifting from gold to red. Anna didn't cry. She'd learned years ago that tears were a luxury that changed nothing. Instead, she thought about Rhett, about the ranch, about the brief moment of peace she'd found before it all came crashing down. As evening fell, she heard voices outside. Rhett's voice, low and urgent, speaking to the deputy. Then footsteps, and Rhett appeared outside her cell, his face haggard in the lamplight. 5 minutes, Deputy Crawford said. That's all I can give you. Rhett nodded, and the deputy retreated to the front office. Rhett gripped the bars of the cell, his knuckles white. I hired a lawyer, he said. Best one in the territory. He's reviewing the case, looking for ways to fight the extradition. Rhett, you can't afford that. I don't care what it costs. I'm not losing you. He pressed his forehead against the bars. Anna, I need you to understand something. When Iris died, I thought my life was over. Thought I'd just go through the motions until I died too. But then you showed up and everything changed. You made me remember what it feels like to hope. Don't, Anna whispered. Don't say things that will make this harder. I'm saying them because they're true. Because you need to know that you matter. That you're not alone in this. She moved closer to the bars, her hands covering his. If I'm sent back to Pennsylvania, I'll be convicted. The Ashfords have money and influence. I'm nobody. You're not nobody. Not to me. His eyes were fierce. And I'm going to prove your innocence. I'm going to find that bastard Thomas Ashford and make him tell the truth if I have to drag it out of him. He's 3,000 miles away. Then I'll ride 3,000 miles. Despite everything, Anna almost smiled. You're insane. Probably. He brought her hands to his lips, kissing her scarred knuckles. But I'm not giving up on you. Promise me you won't give up either. I promise. The deputy appeared at the end of the hall. Time's up, Redding. Rhett held her gaze for one more moment, then forced himself to let go of her hands and step back. I'll be back tomorrow. Every day. Until you're free. He left, and Anna sank onto the cot, something warm and painful lodged in her chest. No one had ever fought for her before. No one had ever believed in her like this. It was terrifying and beautiful, and made the cell feel both smaller and less suffocating at the same time. 3 days passed. Rhett came every day, sometimes twice, bringing her books and food and news of his progress. The lawyer was building a case, but it was slow, complicated by the distance and the Ashfords' influence. Victoria had returned to the ranch, consolidating her power, making decisions without Rhett's input. He was losing everything, and it was Anna's fault. On the 4th day, something changed. Anna was dozing on the cot when she heard urgent voices outside. Deputy Crawford appeared, unlocking her cell. You've got a visitor, he said. Important one. Anna was led to a small room where an elderly woman sat at a wooden table. She was tiny and bird-like, with white hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to see everything. She wore a simple but well-made dress, and her hands, folded on the table, were marked with age spots and arthritis. Sit down, child, the woman said. Her voice was soft but commanded obedience. Anna sat, confused. Who are you? My name is Margaret Ashford. I'm Thomas's grandmother. Anna's heart stopped. Another Ashford. He had to gloat, probably. To see the woman who'd supposedly ruined her grandson. But Margaret's expression wasn't cruel. It was sad and knowing and weary. I know you didn't steal that money, she said quietly. Anna stared at her. What? Thomas is my grandson and I love him. But he's also a liar and a gambler and a coward. I knew he'd taken that money. Knew he was drowning in debts. And when he blamed you, I knew that was a lie too. Margaret's eyes glistened. But I said nothing. Because he's family. Because I was weak. Because I thought protecting him was more important than protecting the truth. Why are you telling me this now? Ah! Well, because I'm dying. Margaret's laugh was bitter. Cancer. The doctor gives me 6 months. And I realized I don't want to meet my maker with this lie on my conscience. I don't want to die knowing an innocent woman went to prison because I was too cowardly to speak. Anna's hands trembled on the table. Will you testify? Will you tell them the truth? I'll do better than that. Margaret reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. These are letters from Thomas to his gambling associates, detailing his debts and his plan to steal from the family. I found them hidden in his room after you'd fled. I kept them, thinking maybe someday I'd have the courage to use them. That day is today. She pushed the envelope across the table. Anna opened it with shaking hands. Inside were at least a dozen letters, all in Thomas's handwriting, all damning. Proof. Real, tangible proof. "Why?" Anna whispered. "Why help me now?" "Because you remind me of myself when I was young, poor, alone, trying to survive in a world that wanted to crush me. I married into the Ashford family, and it saved me. But it also made me complicit in their cruelty." Margaret's voice cracked. "Let me do one good thing before I die. Let me give you back your life." Tears streamed down Anna's face. "Thank you." "God, thank you. Don't thank me. Thank that man who won't stop fighting for you. Your Mr. Redding came to Philadelphia. Did you know that? He tracked me down, demanded an audience, refused to leave until I agreed to see him. He told me about you, about how hard you work, how honest you are. He looked me in the eye and said he'd burn down my family's entire fortune if that's what it took to prove your innocence." Anna's breath caught. "He went to Philadelphia?" 4 days ago. That's a hard ride. He must have left the day you were arrested." Margaret smiled. "That's a man who loves you, child. Don't let him go." Before Anna could respond, the door burst open. Deputy Crawford looked stunned. "Miss Webb, you're free to go. The charges have been dropped. Mr. Ashford, the father, he just withdrew the warrant. Said there'd been a terrible mistake." Anna looked at Margaret, who nodded. "I sent my son a telegram this morning. Told him either he'd drop the charges or I'd release these letters to every newspaper in Philadelphia. The Ashford name means everything to Jonathan. He chose reputation over revenge. The shackles that had been around Anna's wrists for days, invisible but heavy, suddenly fell away. She stood on shaking legs as Deputy Crawford unlocked the cell door. "I don't know how to repay you," Anna said to Margaret. "Live well. Love that man. Be happy." Margaret stood slowly, leaning on a cane. "That will be payment enough." Anna was escorted out of the jail into the late afternoon sun. The air smelled sweet and clean, and the sky was impossibly blue. She stood on the wooden sidewalk, blinking in the brightness, trying to process that she was free. Actually free. Then she saw him. Rhett dismounting from his horse across the street, his clothes dusty from hard travel, his face exhausted. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then Anna was running across the dusty street, not caring who saw, not caring about anything except reaching him. He caught her in his arms, lifting her off the ground, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You're free," he said against her hair, his voice breaking. "God, Anna, you're free. You went to Philadelphia." "Margaret told me I'd have gone to the ends of the earth." She pulled back just enough to see his face, to touch his cheek, to assure herself he was real. "Why? Why would you risk everything for me?" "Because I love you." The words were simple, certain, unchangeable. "I've loved you since the day you refused to give up on that wine stain in the carpet. Since you sang to the horses. Since you stood up to Victoria. Since you chose to stay and fight instead of run. I love you, Anna Webb, and I'm done pretending I don't." People were staring. The whole town was probably watching. Anna didn't care. She pulled his face down to hers and kissed him, fierce and desperate and full of everything she'd been too afraid to feel. He kissed her back like a man who'd been drowning and finally found air. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rhett pressed his forehead to hers. "Come home," he whispered. "Come home with me. What about Victoria? The ranch? We'll figure it out together." He took her hand. "But right now, I just want to take you home." Anna nodded, and they rode back to the ranch side by side, the setting sun painting the desert gold and red around them. For the first time in years, Anna wasn't running. She was going home. The ranch looked different when they returned. Or maybe Anna was different. She rode beside Rhett through the gate as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting everything in shades of crimson and gold. The cottonwoods whispered in the evening breeze. The horses in the corral lifted their heads, recognizing the sound of hoofbeats. Everything was familiar, yet somehow transformed. But the moment they dismounted, reality crashed back. Victoria stood on the porch, her arms crossed, her expression cold with fury. Behind her stood a man Anna had never seen before, tall and lean, with a weather-beaten face and calculating eyes. He wore a marshal's badge, but not the local deputy's star. This was something more official, more dangerous. "Well," Victoria said, her voice dripping with venom, "the criminal returns." "How predictable." "The charges were dropped," Rhett said flatly. "Anna's innocent, and you know it." "Innocent?" Victoria laughed, sharp and brittle. "She was arrested by federal marshals. The fact that some senile old woman provided convenient evidence doesn't erase that. It certainly doesn't change what needs to happen here." The man with the badge stepped forward. "Mr. Redding, I'm Federal Marshal Daniels. I've been reviewing the financial records of this ranch at Mrs. Victoria Ashford's request. There are some serious irregularities I need to discuss with you." Anna felt Rhett tense beside her. "What kind of irregularities?" "Sedgy, missing funds, unexplained expenses, possible fraud in the cattle sales from last season." Marshal Daniels pulled out a leather-bound ledger. "According to these records, you reported selling 200 head of cattle. But the buyer's receipts only show 150. That's 50 head unaccounted for, worth approximately $1,500. "That's impossible," Rhett said. "I kept every receipt." Then perhaps you can explain these discrepancies." The marshal opened the ledger, and Anna saw pages of numbers, entries that had been altered, figures that didn't match. Her blood ran cold. Victoria smiled like a cat with a cornered mouse. "It seems my dear brother-in-law has been embezzling from his own ranch. From my investment. As co-owner, I'm within my rights to press charges." "You doctored those books," Anna said, her voice shaking with rage. "You changed the numbers? Can you prove that?" Victoria's eyes glittered. "Because Marshal Daniels has the original ledgers, the ones Rhett kept locked in his office, the ones only he had access to." Rhett's face had gone pale. "I didn't alter anything. Those books were accurate when I last checked them 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks is a long time," Victoria said smoothly. "Plenty of time for someone desperate for money to falsify records, especially someone who just spent a fortune hiring lawyers and traveling to Philadelphia." The trap was elegant and vicious. Victoria had waited until Rhett was vulnerable, until he'd spent his resources saving Anna, and then she'd struck. She'd had access to the office, to the ledgers, to everything she needed to frame him. "Mrs. Ashford has filed a formal complaint," Marshal Daniels said. "Mr. Redding, I'm going to need you to come with me for questioning. If you can provide evidence of your innocence, this can be resolved quickly." "And if he can't?" Anna demanded. "Then he'll be charged with fraud and embezzlement. Given the amount involved, that's a federal offense. 5 to 10 years in prison." Anna's world tilted. They'd just escaped one nightmare only to fall into another. Victoria had planned this perfectly, waited for the exact moment when they'd be most vulnerable. "You can't do this," Anna said desperately. "He's innocent, and so you say," Victoria replied. "But the evidence speaks for itself." "Unless, of course, you'd like to confess that you were the one who altered the books. After all, you had access to the office. You could have changed the numbers while Rhett was distracted with your legal troubles. It was another trap. Confess and go to prison herself, or watch Rhett be destroyed." Victoria had thought of everything. "Don't," Rhett said quietly, his hand finding Anna's. "Don't even think about it." "Mr. Redding," the marshal said, "I need you to come with me. Now." Rhett looked at Anna, and in his eyes she saw apology and determination and love. "Find the real ledgers," he said quietly. "The originals. I kept copies hidden. Office safe behind the painting of Iris. Combination is her birthday. Rhett, trust me." He squeezed her hand once, then released it and turned to the marshal. "I'll come peacefully, but I want it on record that I'm innocent, and this is a set-up orchestrated by Victoria Ashford to steal my ranch." "That's slander," Victoria said coldly. "That's the truth, and you know it." Marshal Daniels led Rhett to his horse. Anna watched, helpless, as the man she loved was taken away for a crime he didn't commit. Victoria stood on the porch, triumphant, and when Rhett was out of sight, she turned to Anna. "You should have taken my offer when you had the chance," she said. "Now you have nothing. No job, no home, no future. And Rhett will rot in prison while I sell this ranch piece by piece." "I'll stop you," Anna said. "How? You're nobody." A former servant with a criminal record. Who's going to believe you? Victoria descended the steps, her eyes cold and cruel. I want you off this property by morning. Take whatever you came with and nothing more. If I see you here after sunrise, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. She swept past Anna and into the house, slamming the door behind her. Anna stood alone in the gathering darkness, the wind cold against her skin. Everything they'd fought for, everything they'd survived was crumbling. But then she remembered Rhett's words. The safe, the copies, evidence that could prove Victoria's guilt. Anna's jaw set with determination. She wasn't beaten yet. Anna waited until the house was dark and silent. Victoria had retired to the guest room hours ago, probably celebrating her victory with expensive whiskey from Rhett's private stock. The ranch hands were in the bunkhouse, unaware of the drama unfolding. The night was moonless, perfect for what Anna needed to do. She slipped into the house through the kitchen door, moving silently through rooms she knew by heart. Every creaking floorboard, every loose nail, she'd memorized them all during her weeks of work. She reached Rhett's office and closed the door quietly behind her, lighting a single candle. The painting of Iris hung on the wall behind the desk. She was beautiful in the portrait, dark-haired and gentle-eyed, with a smile that suggested secrets and joy. Anna felt a pang of something, not jealousy exactly, but awareness that she was walking in the footsteps of a ghost. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us now. Back to the story. She lifted the painting carefully. Behind it was a small wall safe, its combination lock gleaming in the candlelight. Iris's birthday. But what was Iris's birthday? Rhett had never mentioned it. Anna closed her eyes, thinking back through every conversation, every small detail. Then she remembered the gravestone on the hill. She'd seen it once while collecting firewood. The dates carved in marble. Born April 15th, 1851. Her fingers trembled as she turned the dial. 4:15:51, a click, and the safe door swung open. Inside were papers, deeds, and a second ledger, its pages filled with Rhett's careful handwriting. Anna pulled it out, her heart pounding. These were the real numbers, the accurate records. Proof that the books Marshall Daniels had shown were forgeries. I wondered when you'd come looking. Anna spun around. Victoria stood in the doorway, a pistol in her hand. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, her dress replaced by a silk nightgown, but her eyes were hard and alert. Put the ledger back, Victoria said calmly. This proves Rhett's innocent. This proves you forged the evidence. Does it? Or does it prove that Rhett kept two sets of books, one real and one false? Victoria stepped into the room, the gun steady in her hand. That's what any court will believe. That he tried to hide his crimes? You won't get away with this. I already have. Victoria's smile was cold. Rhett will be convicted. The ranch will be sold. And you'll disappear into whatever hole you crawled out of. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to disappear permanently. The threat was clear. Anna's mind raced. She could rush Victoria, try to take the gun. But Victoria's finger was on the trigger, and at this distance she wouldn't miss. Why do you hate him so much? Anna asked, buying time. What did Rhett ever do to you? He took my sister. Victoria's voice cracked with old anger. Iris was supposed to marry Charles Pemberton, a railroad magnate's son. We were supposed to move in the highest circles of society. But then Rhett came along with his horses and his frontier dreams, and Iris threw it all away. Threw me away. Condemned herself to this miserable existence. She loved him. Love. Victoria spat the word like poison. Love is what weak people tell themselves to justify bad decisions. Iris died here in the middle of nowhere with nothing. And for what? For a man who couldn't even keep her alive. That wasn't his fault. Beaver doesn't care about love or money. Maybe not. But if she'd stayed in society, stayed where she belonged, she'd still be alive. The best doctors, the finest care. Instead, she died in a dirt-floor ranch house with a frontier doctor who probably learned medicine from a book. Victoria's hand tightened on the gun. So yes, I hate him. I hate him for taking her. And I'll take everything from him in return. A sound from outside, horses, multiple riders approaching fast. Victoria's eyes flicked to the window, distracted for just a second. Anna threw the candle. It hit Victoria's shoulder, hot wax splattering, and Victoria jerked back with a cry. Anna lunged, grabbing for the gun. They crashed into the desk, papers flying, the ledger skittering across the floor. The gun went off, deafening in the small room, the bullet burying itself in the ceiling. They struggled, both fighting for control of the weapon. Victoria was stronger than she looked, fueled by years of resentment and rage. She drove her knee into Anna's stomach, and Anna gasped, her grip loosening. Victoria wrenched the gun free and brought it up, her face twisted with fury. The door burst open. Rhett stood there, Marshal Daniels beside him, both men taking in the scene. Victoria froze, the gun still pointed at Anna. "Put it down, Mrs. Ashford," the Marshal said calmly. "There's nowhere to go from here." "She attacked me," Victoria said quickly. "I was defending myself." "We heard everything," Rhett said, his voice hard as iron. "The Marshal wanted to test my story, so he let me go and we came back together. We've been outside the window for the last 5 minutes. We heard you confess to forging the ledgers, to framing me, to threatening Anna's life." Victoria's face went white, then red with rage. "You have no proof. It's your word against mine. Actually," a voice said from the hallway, "they have my testimony too." Cyrus, the ranch hand who'd made crude comments about Anna weeks ago, stepped into view. "I saw you in the office 3 nights ago, ma'am. Saw you changing numbers in the ledger. Didn't think much of it at the time. Figured it was your right as co-owner. But after the Marshal came, I started wondering. Then I heard everything you just said, same as them." Victoria's world was collapsing. Anna could see it in her face, the desperate calculation of someone with no moves left. For a moment, Anna thought she might actually pull the trigger, go down fighting, but then Victoria's shoulders sagged. The gun lowered. Marshal Daniels moved quickly, taking the weapon and securing Victoria's hands behind her back with iron cuffs. "Victoria Ashford, you're under arrest for fraud, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit theft," he said formally. "You have the right to remain silent." Victoria laughed, a broken, bitter sound. "Silent, that's rich. I've been silent my whole life. Silent about what I wanted. Silent about what I deserved. Silent while my sister chose this nothing life over everything we could have had." She looked at Rhett, her eyes glistening with tears and hatred. "I hope you're happy. I hope she was worth it." "She was," Rhett said quietly. "Iris was worth everything. And so is Anna." Marshal Daniels led Victoria out. They could hear her crying as she was placed on a horse, the sound fading as the Marshal took her toward town and the jail that would hold her until trial. Cyrus nodded to Rhett and left, tactfully giving them privacy. Anna and Rhett stood in the wrecked office, surrounded by scattered papers and the smell of gunpowder. Anna was shaking, the adrenaline draining away and leaving her hollow. "Are you hurt?" Rhett asked, pulling her into his arms. "No, just scared. I thought she was going to kill me. If she had, I'd have killed her." His voice was flat, certain. "I'd have torn her apart." Anna pulled back to look at his face. "How did you know to come back?" "I didn't trust the timing. Didn't trust that Victoria would move so quickly unless she had something else planned. So I convinced the Marshal to let me go and come back together. We were going to search for the real ledgers when we heard voices in the office." He cupped her face in his hands. "You were so brave. So damn brave. I was terrified. Brave isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing what needs to be done anyway." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "God, Anna, when I heard that gunshot—" "I'm okay. We're both okay." They held each other in the candlelit office, the painting of Iris watching over them. Anna felt no jealousy now, only gratitude. Iris had loved Rhett enough to try to protect him, even in death. And now Anna would love him enough to protect him in life. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we rebuild, together." Rhett smiled, tired but genuine. "Victoria will go to prison. Her claim on the ranch dies with her conviction. The land will be mine again. Ours if you'll have it. Ours. I want you to stay, Anna, not as a servant. As my partner. My wife, if you'll have me." He dropped to one knee right there among the scattered papers, still holding her hands. "I know it's fast. I know we haven't known each other long, but I know my heart, and my heart knows you. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Anna's face. A month ago, she'd been nobody, running from a past that wouldn't let her go. Now she was someone's future, someone's choice, someone's love. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." He stood and kissed her, deep and sweet and full of promise. Outside, the wind whispered through the cottonwoods. The horses settled in their stalls. The ranch breathed easier, as if it knew the worst had passed. But neither of them knew that the real test was still to come. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Victoria was formally charged and held in the territorial prison awaiting trial. The ranch's finances were sorted out with the real ledgers as evidence. The town, which had whispered and judged, suddenly found reasons to visit, to apologize, to welcome Anna properly. She accepted their words with grace, though she didn't forget how quickly they'd turned on her. Rhett began the process of officially removing Victoria's name from the ranch deed. His lawyer assured him it would be straightforward given her crimes. Plans were made for a small wedding, just the ranch hands and a few townspeople. To be held under the cottonwoods where Rhett had first asked her to stay, Anna threw herself into preparations, cleaning and cooking and making the house feel like a home again instead of a mausoleum. She hung new curtains, planted flowers by the porch, sang while she worked. The horses responded to her joy, and even the ranch hands smiled more. But on a Tuesday morning, everything changed. Anna was in the barn, brushing down the grey mare when she smelled it. Smoke. Faint at first, just a trace on the wind. Then stronger, much stronger. She stepped out of the barn and her blood turned to ice. The main house was on fire. Flames licked from the kitchen windows, black smoke pouring into the sky. And through the smoke she heard it. A child's scream. Anna's mind went blank with terror and instinct. She ran toward the house, ignoring the heat, ignoring the danger. Somewhere in her mind, she knew this made no sense. There were no children at the ranch. But the scream came again, desperate and terrified, and her body moved without conscious thought. She burst through the front door into a wall of smoke and heat. The fire had started in the kitchen and was spreading fast, eating through the old timber like hunger. Anna dropped low, covering her mouth with her sleeve, crawling forward. The scream came from upstairs. Anna's vision blurred with smoke and tears. But she found the stairs and climbed, the heat so intense it felt like her skin was blistering. The upstairs hallway was an inferno, but she pushed through, following the sound. In one of the bedrooms, huddled in a corner, were 2 children. A boy and a girl, no more than 7 or 8 years old, their faces streaked with soot and terror. Anna's mind couldn't process it. Whose children? How had they gotten here? It didn't matter. Nothing mattered except getting them out. She grabbed both children, pulling them toward the door. A beam collapsed behind them, showering sparks. The stairs were completely engulfed now. No way down. The window. Anna ran to it, threw it open. Below was a 15-foot drop onto hard-packed dirt. "Jump!" She screamed over the roar of the flames. The children were too terrified to move. Anna didn't have time to argue. She grabbed the girl and threw her out the window, praying someone below would catch her. Then the boy, his screams cutting through the smoke. Then the floor beneath Anna gave way. She fell into darkness and fire, hitting something hard. The breath knocked from her lungs. Consciousness flickered. She was vaguely aware of hands grabbing her, pulling her, dragging her through flames that licked at her dress. Then cool air, grass beneath her back, voices shouting her name. "Anna! Anna, stay with me!" Rhett's face swam into view above her, streaked with soot and tears. She tried to speak but coughed instead, her lungs burning. Around them, the ranch hands fought the fire with buckets of water, a losing battle against the hungry flames. "The children," Anna gasped out. They're safe. You saved them." Rhett's voice broke. "You beautiful, insane, brave woman. You saved them." Anna's vision was fading. She was aware of pain, distant and growing, spreading through her body like the fire had spread through the house. She tried to tell Rhett she loved him, tried to say so many things, but darkness was pulling her down. The last thing she heard before unconsciousness took her was Rhett's voice, desperate and commanding, telling someone to ride for the doctor, telling her to hold on, telling her she wasn't allowed to leave him. Then nothing. Anna woke to whiteness. White ceiling, white walls, white sheets pulled up to her chin. For a moment, she thought she'd died and this was heaven, though heaven smelled strongly of carbolic acid and burned wood. Then the pain hit, a wave of fire across her back and arms that made her gasp. "Don't move." A woman's voice, firm but kind. A face appeared above her, middle-aged with steel-grey hair pulled back severely. "You've got burns on 40% of your body. Moving will tear the bandages and set back your healing by weeks." "Where am I?" Anna's voice came out as a rasp, her throat raw from smoke. "Dr. Sarah Hartley's clinic in Red Mesa. You've been unconscious for 3 days. Your Mr. Redding hasn't left your side, except when I physically forced him out to eat and sleep." The doctor checked Anna's pulse, her fingers cool and professional. "You're a very lucky woman. Another minute in that fire, and you wouldn't have survived." Memory crashed back. The house burning. The children screaming. The fall through the floor. Rhett's face above her, desperate and terrified. "The children," Anna said urgently. "Are they alive and well thanks to you? Not a scratch on them beyond some smoke inhalation." Dr. Hartley pulled up a chair and sat down, her expression serious. "Now I need to know something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Do you remember those children? Had you ever seen them before?" Anna tried to think through the fog of pain and medication. "No, I'd never seen them. I don't know whose they were or how they got in the house." The doctor's face grew troubled. "That's what I was afraid of. Miss Webb, there were no children in that fire." The words made no sense. "What? But I heard them. I saw them. I threw them out the window." You threw nothing out the window. When Mr. Redding pulled you from the burning building, you were alone, unconscious, nearly dead from smoke inhalation and burns. There were no children anywhere on the property. Anna's mind reeled. "That's impossible. I held them. I felt their weight. They were real." "I believe you believe that." Dr. Hartley's voice was gentle but firm. "Smoke inhalation can cause vivid hallucinations. Your mind, under extreme stress and oxygen deprivation, created what it needed to see. Children in danger. A reason to push through impossible odds. No." Anna shook her head, immediately regretting it as pain lanced through her skull. "They were real. I heard them screaming before I even entered the house. Miss Webb, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to help you heal. But you need to understand what happened so you can process it." The doctor stood, checking the bandages on Anna's arms. "You ran into a burning building for no reason except your own heroic instinct. You nearly died, and now you need to focus on recovering, not on phantom children." Before Anna could respond, the door opened. Rhett stepped in, and the sight of him made Anna's heart clench. He'd looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 days. His face was haggard, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep and tears, his clothes rumpled. But when he saw her awake, his expression transformed. "Anna." He was at her bedside in 3 strides, taking her unbandaged hand in both of his. "Thank God, oh, thank God. I'll give you privacy," Dr. Hartley said. "But remember what I said, Miss Webb, rest and recovery. No stress." She left, and Rhett carefully, so carefully, leaned down to kiss Anna's forehead. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered, "when that floor collapsed and I couldn't reach you. When I finally pulled you out and you weren't breathing. I thought—" His voice broke. Anna squeezed his hand as tightly as her weakened state allowed. "I'm here. I'm alive because you're too stubborn to die." He laughed, but it was choked with tears. "Anna, what were you thinking? Running into a burning building?" The children. I heard children screaming." Rhett's expression shifted, became careful. "The doctor told you there were no children, but I heard them, Rhett. I saw them. 2 kids, maybe 7 or 8 years old. A boy and a girl. They were terrified." He was quiet for a long moment. "Anna, the house was empty. I'd sent the ranch hands to check the fences. I was at the barn working on Thunder's shoes. When I saw the smoke and got there, you were already inside. There was no one else. Then who started the fire? The marshal thinks it was an accident. Old stove, dry timber, a spark that caught wrong. These things happen, but Anna saw something in his eyes. A flicker of doubt. A question he wasn't asking. "You don't believe that?" she said. Rhett sighed and pulled the chair closer to her bed. "I don't know what I believe. The fire started in the kitchen, yes, but it spread too fast, too perfectly, like it had help. And there's something else." He reached into his coat and pulled out a piece of paper, folded and singed at the edges. "I found this nailed to what was left of the barn door. Someone left it after the fire was out." Anna took the paper with her good hand and unfolded it. The message was written in crude block letters, the ink smeared but readable. "She pays for what she took. The debt is not finished." Cold terror slid down Anna's spine. "Who wrote this?" I don't know. But whoever it is, they blame you for something. And they're not done." Rhett's jaw was set, his eyes hard. "Marshal Daniels is investigating, but so far there are no leads, no witnesses. Whoever did this knew when the ranch would be mostly empty." "Victoria," Anna said immediately. "She must have someone helping her. Someone on the outside. Victoria's been in a cell since her arrest. She's had no visitors except her lawyer, and he's been watched. It's not her? Then who?" Anna's mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. "Rhett, what if it's someone from my past? What if someone from Philadelphia followed me here? The Ashfords withdrew all charges. Margaret's testimony cleared you completely." "Not the Ashfords. Someone else." Anna's breath came faster, pain and fear making her dizzy. "There were others who wanted me silenced. People Thomas owed money to. People who thought I knew where he kept his gambling winnings." Rhett's expression darkened. "You never mentioned this." "Because I didn't think they'd find me. I've been running for 2 years, Rhett. Changed my name twice before I became Anna Webb. I thought I was finally safe." "You are safe. I won't let anyone hurt you." His voice was fierce, protective. "But Anna, I need you to tell me everything. Every detail about your past, every person who might want revenge. We can't fight an enemy we can't see," so Anna told him. About Thomas Ashford's gambling debts to dangerous men in Philadelphia's underground. About the night before she ran, when 2 men in expensive suits had cornered her in an alley, demanding she tell them where Thomas had hidden his money. About the knife one of them had pressed against her throat, while he promised that if she ever spoke about what she knew, they'd find her and make sure she never spoke again. "I didn't know anything," Anna finished, her voice hollow. "Thomas never told me where he kept his winnings. But they didn't believe me. They thought I was protecting him, or that I'd taken the money myself. That's why I ran, not just from the law, but from them." Rhett's fists were clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. "Names, give me names." "I don't know their real names." But one of them had a scar across his left eye. The other was missing 2 fingers on his right hand. They worked for someone called Calloway. "That's all I heard. Calloway." Rhett stood abruptly. "I need to send telegrams. Check if anyone by that name or matching those descriptions has been seen in the territory. Rhett, please don't leave me." Anna hated the fear in her voice, but she couldn't help it. "What if they come back?" He leaned down and kissed her gently. "I'm posting guards outside your door. Doc Hartley has a shotgun she's not afraid to use. And I'll be back within the hour. I promise." After he left, Anna lay in the white room, her mind spinning with terror and questions. The children, the fire, the note. Nothing made sense, yet everything pointed to one conclusion. Someone wanted her dead, and they'd nearly succeeded. Days passed in a blur of pain and slow healing. Dr. Hartley changed Anna's bandages twice daily, each time revealing skin that was raw and angry, but gradually improving. Rhett visited constantly, bringing news and reassurance. The marshal had found no leads on the fire's origin or the note's author. No one matching the descriptions of Thomas's creditors had been seen in Red Mesa or the surrounding territories. But Anna couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that somewhere in the shadows someone was waiting for another chance. On the 5th day of her recovery, Anna was finally allowed to sit up. The pain was manageable now, reduced to a constant ache rather than the screaming agony of the first days. Dr. Hartley declared her well enough to have visitors beyond Rhett, and immediately 3 people appeared in her doorway. The first was Cyrus, the ranch hand who testified against Victoria. He held his hat in his hands, his weathered face uncomfortable with emotion. "Miss Webb," he said gruffly, "just wanted to say you're the bravest damn woman I ever met. What you did running into that fire, that took courage I ain't sure I got." "Thank you, Cyrus." Also wanted to apologize for the things I said before, about you being improper. "I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Anna smiled, touched. "Apology accepted." The second visitor was unexpected. A young Mexican woman, perhaps 20, with long black hair and worried eyes. She introduced herself as Elena and explained that she owned the cantina in town. "I have information," Elena said quietly, glancing at the door to ensure they were alone. "About the fire. About the men who might have started it." Anna's heart raced. "What men?" "The 2 strangers came through town the day before the fire. They asked questions about you. About the ranch? About when Mr. Redding would be away from the house." Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. One of them had a scar on his face. Across the eye, the room seemed to tilt. "Did they say anything else?" "Once only that they were looking for someone who owed a debt. They showed me a picture, an old photograph. It was you, but younger. Your hair was different, and why didn't you tell anyone?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Because they threatened my family. Said if I spoke to the law, they'd burn down my cantina with my children inside. I was scared. But after what happened to you, after seeing what they're capable of, I can't stay silent anymore." "Where are they now?" Anna demanded. "I don't know. They left town after the fire. But Miss Webb, they said something before they left. They said the debt wasn't paid, that you'd taken something that belonged to their boss, and he wanted it back. But I didn't take anything. Then maybe you did and don't know it. Maybe Thomas gave you something without telling you." Elena stood, backing toward the door. "Be careful, Miss Webb. These are not men who give up." She left, and Anna sat alone with the crushing weight of new knowledge. The men from Philadelphia had found her. They'd burned the house trying to kill her. And they weren't finished. The third visitor came that evening. Marshal Daniels entered with Rhett, both men looking grim. The marshal pulled up a chair and sat down heavily. "Miss Webb, we need to talk about witness protection," he said without preamble. "What?" Based on Elena's testimony and some telegrams I received from Philadelphia, it appears you're being hunted by members of the Calloway gang. They're dangerous criminals wanted in 4 states for murder, arson, and extortion. If they've tracked you here, your life is in immediate danger." "I'm not leaving," Anna said immediately. "Anna, be reasonable," Rhett interjected. "If these men are as dangerous as the marshal says, then running won't save me. They found me once, they'll find me again." Anna's voice was steel. "Besides, I won't let them drive me away from the only home I've ever known." "From you? Then we need to draw them out," the marshal said. "Set a trap. Use you as bait." "Absolutely not," Rhett growled. "It's the only way to catch them before they try again. And they will try again, Mr. Redding. Men like this don't give up until their target is dead, or they are—" Anna looked between the 2 men, then made her decision. "I'll do it. Tell me what you need." The plan was simple but dangerous. Anna would return to the ranch, ostensibly to recover in familiar surroundings. Word would be spread that she was alone, vulnerable, still weak from her injuries. The marshal would position his deputies in hiding around the property. When the Calloway gang made their move, they'd be caught in the trap. "I don't like this," Rhett said for the 100th time as they rode back to the ranch a week later. Anna was still bandaged, still in pain, but mobile enough to play her part. There are too many things that could go wrong. Everything could go wrong. Or everything could go right, and this nightmare finally ends. Anna looked at the burned ruins of the main house as they approached. The barn had survived, as had the bunkhouse and stables. But the house where she'd almost died was now just blackened timber and ash. They'd set up a temporary living space in the barn loft, making it look lived in and vulnerable. Rhett would be hidden in the stable below with the marshal. 3 deputies were positioned around the property, invisible but ready. Anna climbed the ladder to the loft. her movements slow and painful but determined. Night fell. Anna lit a single lantern and positioned herself where she'd be visible from outside. She was armed with a pistol Rhett had insisted she carry, though her burned hands made gripping it difficult. The hours crawled by. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Midnight came and went. Anna was beginning to think the trap had failed when she heard it. A soft scrape of boots on wood. Someone climbing the outside of the barn. She tensed, her hand moving to the pistol. A figure appeared at the loft opening. Man tall and lean, with a scar cutting across his left eye. Behind him, another figure, missing fingers on the right hand. The men from Philadelphia, the ones who'd threatened her in that alley 2 years ago. Anna Harlow, the scarred man said, his voice smooth and cold. "You've led us on quite a chase." "I don't have what you're looking for," Anna said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "Oh, but you do. Tommy Boy told us before he died. Told us he gave you the ledger. The one with all the names of the people he owed money to. The one that could destroy Mr. Calloway's entire operation. Thomas is dead, and very gambling debts came due and he couldn't pay. But he swore he'd given the ledger to his housekeeper for safekeeping. Said she didn't know what it was, but she had it." The scarred man stepped closer. "Now you can give it to us peaceful-like, or we can burn this barn down with you in it. Your choice. I don't have any ledger. Thomas never gave me anything. Then you're going to die for nothing." He pulled out a pistol. "Shame you're pretty even with the burns." "Now!" Anna screamed. Chaos erupted. Rhett burst from the stable below, gun drawn. The marshal and his deputies rushed from their hiding spots. The scarred man spun, firing wildly. A bullet whizzed past Anna's head, embedding itself in the wall. She dove for cover behind a hay bale, her bandaged hands fumbling for her own weapon. Gunfire echoed through the night. The man with missing fingers went down immediately, shot by one of the deputies. The scarred man fought like a cornered animal, backing toward the loft opening while firing at anything that moved. He grabbed Anna, using her as a shield. "Back off or she dies," he screamed. Rhett froze, his gun trained on the man, but unable to fire without hitting Anna. The scarred man dragged her toward the opening, the 15-foot drop to the ground below. Anna knew if he got her outside, into the darkness, she was dead. So she went limp, becoming dead weight in his arms. Surprised, he loosened his grip for just a second. Anna drove her elbow into his stomach with all her remaining strength. He doubled over and she twisted free. Rhett fired. The scarred man jerked backward, his gun clattering to the floor, and fell through the loft opening. The sound of his body hitting the ground was sickening and final. Silence fell. Smoke from the gunfire drifted through the barn. Anna stood shaking, her bandages torn and bleeding from the struggle. Then Rhett was there, pulling her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "It's over," he whispered into her hair. "It's finally over." Marshal Daniels climbed into the loft, checking the scarred man's gun and nodding with satisfaction. "Both men dead. We'll search their belongings, but I'd wager we find evidence linking them to a dozen unsolved crimes." "What about this ledger?" Anna asked. "The one they said Thomas gave me." "Probably doesn't exist," the marshal said. "Or if it does, it's long gone. Either way, with these two dead and Calloway's operation exposed, you're safe. The gang has bigger problems than one escaped housekeeper." Anna sagged against Rhett, exhaustion and relief overwhelming her. The nightmare that had chased her across a continent was finally over. She was free. Truly, completely free. "Take me home," she whispered to Rhett. "You are home," he replied. And for the first time in her life, Anna believed it. Winter came to the Arizona territory, with snow dusting the distant mesas, and wind carrying a bite that promised harder cold to come. Anna stood on the porch of the new house, wrapped in a wool shawl Rhett had bought her in town, watching the sunrise paint the world in shades of rose and gold. Behind her, through the open door, she could hear him moving in the kitchen, the smell of coffee and bacon drifting out into the crisp morning air. The new house had risen from the ashes over the past 2 months, smaller than the old one, but sturdier, built with help from every rancher within 20 miles who'd heard the story of the servant woman who'd survived assassins and fire. The walls were thick adobe that would keep them warm in winter and cool in summer. The roof was solid timber that would stand for generations. Every beam, every nail, every window represented a second chance. Anna's hands still bore the scars from the burns, pale lines across her palms and fingers that mapped her survival like roads on a territorial map. But they were healed now, functional and strong, like her. She'd been broken and burned and forged into something harder, something that couldn't be destroyed by fire or fear or the ghosts chasing her across a continent. "Coffee's ready," Rhett called from inside, his voice carrying that rough tenderness she'd come to love. Anna turned and walked back into the warmth. The kitchen was simple but comfortable, with a new cast-iron stove and a table Rhett had built himself from cottonwood. He poured 2 cups of coffee and handed her one, his eyes soft as they traced her face, still searching for signs of pain, even though the worst had long passed. "You were thinking about them again," he said. It wasn't a question. He knew her too well now, the children. "I still see them sometimes, in dreams." Anna sipped her coffee, grateful for the warmth spreading through her chest. "Dr. Hartley says hallucinations are common with smoke inhalation, that my mind created what it needed to survive. But they felt so real, Rhett. I can still feel their weight in my arms." "Maybe they were real in the way that matters," he said, setting down his cup and taking her hands in his, careful always of the scars. "Maybe your mind knew you needed a reason to fight through that fire, so it gave you one. You survived, Anna. That's what matters. I survived because you wouldn't let me die. Because you pulled me out when I couldn't save myself. We saved each other," he said firmly, kissing her scarred knuckles. "Every day since you walked onto this ranch carrying that worn carpet bag, we've been saving each other." A knock at the door interrupted them. Rhett's hand moved instinctively to the gun he now wore at all times, a habit born from nearly losing everything that mattered. But when he opened the door, it was only Marshal Daniels, his weathered face ruddy from the cold, his breath forming clouds in the morning air. "Morning, folks. Hope I'm not interrupting breakfast. Come in, Marshal." "Coffee?" Anna was already pulling out another cup, playing hostess in her own home for the first time in her life. "Did he?" "Much obliged, ma'am." He sat heavily at the table, accepting the steaming cup with a grateful nod. "I wanted to update you on the investigation before the news spreads through town. We searched those dead men's belongings thoroughly, found correspondence linking them directly to the Calloway gang, like we suspected. But we also found something else, something important." He pulled out a small, leather-bound book from inside his coat and laid it on the table with the reverence of a man handling dynamite. The cover was worn smooth, the pages yellowed with age and use. Anna stared at it, her heart suddenly pounding against her ribs. "What is it?" she asked, though part of her already knew. "Open it and see for yourself." With trembling hands, Anna opened the book. Inside were pages upon pages of names, dates, and amounts written in cramped handwriting. Debts owed and collected, bribes paid to judges and lawmen, people killed, their deaths recorded like business transactions. It was a complete record of the Calloway gang's criminal operations spanning 5 years. Every dirty deed documented with meticulous care. "This is the ledger," Anna whispered, the pieces finally falling into place. "The one they said Thomas gave me." It was hidden in the lining of the scarred man's coat, sewn in so carefully we almost missed it. Marshal Daniels leaned back in his chair, watching her face. "Best we can figure, Thomas did give it to you, but not directly. You remember that carpet bag you carried when you first came to Red Mesa?" Anna nodded slowly, memory stirring. "I bought it from a pawn shop in St. Louis for 50 cents. It was cheap and barely holding together, but it was all I could afford. Thomas must have pawned it there with the ledger hidden in the lining, planning to retrieve it later when the heat died down. But he never got the chance. His debts caught up with him first. When you bought that bag, you unknowingly bought the one piece of evidence that could destroy Calloway's entire criminal empire." "So I had it all along," Anna said, the weight of it settling over her. "They burned my house and tried to kill me twice for something I didn't even know I possessed." something I carried across half the country without ever knowing. That's about the size of it, ma'am. But here's the silver lining in all this darkness. With this ledger, federal authorities can dismantle the Calloway gang completely. Every name in here, every dirty transaction, every murder, it's all documented in their own hand. You've done more to fight organized crime than a dozen lawmen could manage in a lifetime. Rhett's hand found Anna's shoulder, squeezing gently with understanding and pride. What happens now? He asked the marshal. Now Mrs. Redding here becomes a federal witness. She'll need to testify when the trials begin, probably in the spring when the mountain passes clear. But after that, the marshal's weathered face softened into something almost like a smile. After that, she's free, truly free. Calloway and everyone in that book will be locked up for the rest of their natural lives. There'll be no one left to come after her, no one left who cares about ancient history. After the marshal left, Anna sat at the table for a long time, just staring at the ledger. Such a small thing, barely larger than her hand. Such an ordinary-looking book with its worn leather cover and yellowed pages. And yet it had shaped the last 2 years of her life, driven her across a continent in fear, nearly killed her twice, and ultimately led her here to this kitchen, this man, this life she never dared dream possible. "Burn it!" she said suddenly, her voice stronger than she felt. Rhett looked at her with surprise and then understanding. "Anna, the marshal needs that for evidence in the trials. He already made copies, he said so, for complete copies locked in federal vaults." She picked up the ledger, feeling the weight of it in her scarred hands, feeling the weight of everything it represented. "This is the original, the thing they killed for, the thing that's haunted me. I want to burn it. I want to watch it turn to ash and smoke. I want to be done with this chapter of my life forever." Understanding dawned fully in Rhett's eyes, warm and loving. He stood without another word and built up the fire in the stove until it roared like a living thing, flames licking hungrily at the iron walls. Then he stepped back and held out his hand to her. Anna took it, and they approached the stove together. She held the ledger out before her, this book of death and debt that had controlled her fate without her knowledge. For a moment she hesitated. This book represented justice, punishment for the men who'd terrorized her, validation that she'd been telling the truth all along. But it also represented everything she wanted to leave behind. Every moment of fear, every night of running, every time she'd looked over her shoulder expecting death, she threw it into the flames. The leather cover caught immediately, curling and blackening. The pages ignited one by one, years of criminal records dissolving into smoke and ash. Names of the dead and dying, debts that would never be collected, crimes that would now be punished, all of it turning to nothing in the heat. Anna watched until there was nothing left but embers glowing like dying stars. And with each moment, she felt something heavy lift from her chest. "It's done," she said softly. And the words felt like a prayer. Rhett pulled her into his arms, holding her against his chest, where she could hear his heartbeat steady and sure. "It's done," he agreed, his voice rough with emotion. 2 weeks later, they married under the cottonwoods on a clear December morning, when the sky was impossibly blue, and the air so cold and still it felt like the world was holding its breath. They chose the same spot where Rhett had first asked her to stay, where he'd later dropped to one knee and asked her to be his wife. The same trees that had witnessed the beginning of their improbable story now bore witness to its continuation, their bare branches reaching toward heaven like prayers answered. There was no fancy dress ordered from back east, no elaborate ceremony with 100 guests. Anna wore a simple blue gown that Eleanor from the cantina had helped her sew over 3 evenings, the fabric soft against her scarred skin. Rhett wore his best suit, the one he'd been married in before. And if Anna felt a moment of uncertainty about standing in a place where Iris had stood, where another woman's ghost still lingered in memory, it passed quickly. Iris was gone, taken too soon by fever and fate. Anna was here, alive and choosing this man who'd chosen her when she had nothing to offer but work-worn hands and a haunted past. The gathering was small, but deeply meaningful. The ranch hands stood in respectful attendance, scrubbed clean and wearing clothes that didn't smell of horses and leather for once. Dr. Hartley came, bringing medical supplies as a wedding gift with typical practicality, though her eyes were suspiciously bright. Elena attended with her 3 children, the little ones giggling and chasing each other around the trees while their mother smiled. Even Cyrus, the ranch hand who'd once questioned Anna's character, stood with tears streaming openly down his weathered face as the traveling minister spoke the ancient words that would bind 2 broken souls together. "Do you, Rhett Redding, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." His voice was strong and certain, his storm-grey eyes never leaving Anna's face, holding her gaze like an anchor in turbulent waters. "And do you, Anna Webb, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Juliana thought about the impossible journey that had brought her to this moment. The years of running with fear as her constant companion, the false accusations that had stolen her name and nearly her life, the day she'd stepped off that dusty stagecoach with nothing but a worn carpetbag and a prayer. The moment Rhett had looked at her with those guarded eyes and said she could stay, the fire that had nearly killed her, the love that had saved her when she'd forgotten how to save herself. "I do," she said, and the words felt like finally coming home after years of wandering. The kiss was gentle and sweet and full of promises, neither of them fully understood yet, but both were willing to learn. When they broke apart, the small crowd erupted in cheers and applause that echoed across the empty desert. Someone, probably Cyrus, had brought a fiddle, and soon music filled the cold air, bright and joyful. There was dancing on the frozen ground and laughter that carried on the wind, and food that the neighbors had contributed, each dish a small act of acceptance. It wasn't grand or sophisticated, like the society weddings Anna had once glimpsed in Philadelphia. It was real and honest and utterly perfect, as the sun began to set hours later, painting the world in familiar shades of amber and crimson. Anna found herself standing alone by the cottonwoods, watching the celebration continue. She was memorizing this moment, storing it away like treasure. Rhett approached from behind, his boots crunching on the frozen ground, and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his bearded chin on her shoulder. "Happy?" he asked, his breath warm against her neck. "Terrified," she admitted, allowing herself the honesty this man deserved. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for someone to come and take this away, for me to wake up and find it was all a beautiful dream. Nothing's going to take this away. We've fought too hard for it, survived too much." He turned her gently to face him, his hands cupping her face with infinite care. "Anna Redding, you are my wife now. You are the strongest, bravest, most stubborn woman I've ever known. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making absolutely certain you never doubt that you deserve every single bit of happiness we've found together." Tears streamed down her face, but they were good tears for once. Healing tears that washed away old wounds instead of opening new ones. "I love you," she whispered, the words still new and strange and wonderful on her tongue. "I love you too," he replied. "Always and forever." Spring came with an explosion of wildflowers that carpeted the desert in impossible colors. Anna discovered she was pregnant, and that evening on the hill where Iris was buried, she told Rhett. His joy was pure and unguarded as he placed his hand on her stomach. "We're going to have a baby," he whispered with wonder. Summer brought their daughter on a July morning. The labor was long and difficult, but Dr. Hartley guided them through, and finally a thin wail filled the room. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, wrapping the tiny bundle. "She's perfect." Anna held her daughter and felt something crack open inside her chest. This tiny person was theirs, the product of love and survival and stubborn hope. "What should we name her?" Rhett asked, his voice thick with emotion. Anna thought of all the women who'd shaped her journey. Margaret Ashford, who'd given her freedom, Dr. Hartley, who'd healed her, and Iris, whose love had made Rhett capable of loving again. Grace, Anna said. Grace Iris Redding. Because we've been given grace we didn't deserve. And because Iris gave us this life. Perfect, Rhett whispered, kissing them both. A year passed. The ranch prospered beyond their hopes. Anna's horse-breeding program gained recognition throughout the territory. But more than that, other desperate women began appearing at the gate, seeking the same refuge Anna had once found. She hired them all, gave them work and safety, and a chance to heal. Rhett never questioned her choices. He understood she was paying forward the grace she'd been given. 3 years after Anna first arrived in Red Mesa, a young woman approached them in town. Thin, worn, with hollow eyes. "Are you Anna Redding?" she asked hesitantly. "I am. I heard you help women with nowhere to go. My name is Sarah. I ran from my husband. He beat me. I have nothing. I heard you might have work." Anna looked at this frightened woman and saw herself 3 years ago, desperate, alone, hoping someone would give her a chance. "Can you work hard?" Anna asked. "Harder than anyone," Anna smiled. "Then come home with us. We've got stables that need mucking. The work's brutal and the pay isn't great, but you'll have a place to sleep and food to eat, and no one will ask about your past." "You'll be safe here." Sarah's face crumpled with relief. "Thank you. God, thank you." That evening, after Sarah was settled and Grace was asleep, Anna stood on the porch watching the sunset. Rhett joined her, wrapping a blanket around them both. "She reminds me of you," he said. "That same look. Like she's been broken but refuses to stay broken. This land either breaks you completely or forges you into something stronger. And which happened to you?" Anna thought about the years of running and the scars on her hands. About Grace's laughter and the women they'd helped and the life they'd built from nothing. "Both," she said finally. "I was broken into 1,000 pieces, and from those broken pieces, something infinitely stronger was forged." Rhett pulled her closer. "The poor servant who came just to scrub the stables, and the hunter who dragged her from the burning barn alive. We make quite a story, can't we? Make quite a life." They stood together as stars appeared overhead, as the night wind whispered through the cottonwoods. Behind them, the house glowed with warmth and the sounds of home. Around them, the land stretched endlessly, hard and beautiful and absolutely unforgiving. But they'd learned to love it, learned not just to survive, but to truly thrive in its harsh embrace. Anna closed her eyes and breathed deep, filling her lungs with the cold desert air. No fear tightening her chest, no running toward unknown horizons, no looking over her shoulder, expecting death to finally catch up. Just peace settling over her like a benediction. Just home in every direction she looked. Just the life they'd fought for with everything they had. The desert wind carried the scent of sage and horses and infinite possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new work and perhaps new women seeking refuge. But tonight they had each other. They had their daughter sleeping safely in the house they'd built together. They had land and purpose and love that had survived fire and fear and everything the world had thrown at them. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. And as the last light faded from the western sky and the stars blazed overhead in their ancient patterns, Anna Redding smiled. She'd been hired just to scrub the stables, to be invisible and unnoticed. But she'd become so much more than that. Wife and mother and rancher and refuge for others still running. Home for herself and haven for those still seeking it. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Finally, impossibly completely home. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.